Hey everyone, it's Lisa with Are You My Cousin? And it's Thursday afternoon again, and we are here to chat genealogy. Now, you know, I love to talk all things genealogy, and today I'm really excited because we are going to be talking about the 1921 Census of England and Wales today, which was just released at 12:01 on January 6th, UK time. So I think for us here in America, it was actually came out last night. So super excited about that. Got some really cool information that I'm going to be sharing with you about that and about how it's going to apply for those of my researching friends out there who are researching U.S. ancestors, because there's definitely some tie-ins back into the UK, as well as just some good theory and good tips that apply across the board whenever you're doing any kind of census research, regardless of the country. So before we hop in there, love for you to let me know where you're from. If you are new to Are You My Cousin? If we've not met before, again, my name is Lisa Listen. I blog and I speak over at Are You My Cousin website, and would love for you to take a peek over there when we're done. If it's new to you, we are casual. So if you have questions as we talk today, feel free to put them in the comment section. I do see those and I do look for those and try to make sure I get everything answered. I will tell you, I'm a one-woman show over here most days, as I am today. So if I am a little delayed getting to your question, just sit tight. I will get to it. So feel free, again, to look at it either way. Now, this week obviously is a big week for genealogy because of the release of that 1921 census for England and Wales. Now, there are still a lot of really great things happening elsewhere in the genealogy world. And so one of the things that I would tell you is I'm going to put in a link to my emails. If you want to stay on top of upcoming things, sign up for my email list, and I do send an email out each week to kind of let you know of the big things that are happening in the genealogy world, what's happening at Are You My Cousin, and where I might be appearing as well. So I put that in there for you if you so desire to sign up for that. But don't forget, the big thing coming up obviously would be Roots Tech coming up at the beginning of March. The registration is open. Feel free to go ahead and actually register for that. I'm registered for that. I'm actually speaking there as well. So would love for you guys to join that. Let's see, what else have I got? I will be doing a talk and a workshop through Panga, which is if you were here last week, you heard me talking about this wonderful new service. Is called Panga, Ponga. I'll be talking on facial recognition and using your facial recognition to be able to not only organize my family photos, but actually it helps me in my genealogy research. So that's something you definitely want to keep an eye on the Facebook page, keep an eye on your emails, because all of that information for registration will be there on those as well. So lots of really good stuff. New master classes are going to be coming up in the next week or two, or excuse me, the next month or two. So definitely want to stay in touch. All right, let me see where people are coming from. So, hey, Garfield, I'm so glad you're here for today's program. Hey, Dave, good to see you again. And Garfield's from Dallas, Texas. I love Dallas. My daughter used to live close out there. So, hey, Pam, good to see you from Ohio, and Althea from Ontario, from Harrow, Ontario. We've got Carol from Las Vegas. Feel bad for those researchers in England who have to wait 100 years for the releases. Well, I know, but we all have to wait for record releases. I just kind of go with what you get, right? And hey, Renee from the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. So wonderful. Glad that you guys are here. If you haven't met me before, I'm actually in my home office here in North Carolina. So we have a beautiful sunny day. Although we did see snow earlier this week, which is kind of not a rarity, but we don't get a lot of it here. Hey, Tammy from California, and Diane from Ohio as well. So wonderful, wonderful. All right, so let's get right to that 1921 census for the UK for England and Wales. And actually that brings up something to really kind of point out right there. It is not a UK census, guys. It is the census for England and Wales. So it doesn't include Scotland, and it doesn't include Ireland. They have their own. and their National Archives handle their own census records. So this is just the 1921 census for England and Wales. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as we are going on about our research. Now, one of the really fascinating things about this, and I'm gonna actually pop over and share my screen and share some things with you about that. But some of the same principles apply when we are looking at census records. We need to be prepared before we ever head into that document search for what we might be looking for and what we already know. So we want to make sure we kind of know what we're looking for. In other words, when I'm preparing to look for an ancestor in that 1921 census, I went back and number one, I made sure I had that part of my family tree uploaded on Find My Past. I made sure it was, it was tidied up the way I wanted it to be. And the reason is I wanted to, take advantage of their algorithm and their hints. I also went to 1911 to see where the family was in 1911. So that gave me some good idea. I checked the electoral registers as well to kind of get an address to see if I could find out, did they move around? Were they still in that same area? So that I had some ideas of where to look for them on that 1921 census, because in 1921, and as well as on other census records, we can search in the UK by person like we're used to doing, but we can also search by street address. And on one particular project that I'm personally working on, I have a street address. I have my husband's ancestors. I know what street address they were staying at in London. And so I wanted to find out who lived there, because I wanted to find out, how are they related? Are they other relatives or not? So that was a particular of interest to me. So that's something to think about as we go into that record. So when it comes to researching a census record, and I recognize that not all, I have a large US based audience, and I recognize that many of you may not even have relatives in England or Wales or ancestors, but the theory behind it is be prepared before you go into that record and know what that record can potentially tell you. So regardless of what you're researching, that makes sense. All right, let me check. I saw something pop up over here. Hey, Dorothy from New York City and Lydia from Michigan. Wonderful. Glad you guys are here. All right, I'm going to go right over to and pull up a census record that I was working with earlier to kind of show you some really unique features, because you will notice that the census for England and Wales is different than a US census. So if we're used to working in those US census records, there's some really significant differences when it comes to that, to the ones that were taken over in England and Wales. And I'm sure that this would still apply even if you were working on census record for other countries as well. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me just 1 minute to pull it up for you guys. And let's see here. I think it's this one. Yes, it's this one. Perfect. Okay, let me just make sure I've got you guys optimized on it. Yes, I do. Cool. Okay, so here we are. I have already gone into, this is my Find My Past. I do have a subscription to it. I will give you just full disclosure. I am an affiliate for Find My Past. I do promote their products because I really believe in their product. So I went in and I actually did a street address search for High Street. So I was looking very specifically for a certain address called 242 High Street in Shadwell, the parish of Shadwell, there in London. And so this is an address that my husband's ancestors would visit. And I have that on some other records that they were visiting this specific house. I eventually did find out who, based on the 1911 census, who lived in that house in 1911. So I was trying to find out a little bit more about it. And so I actually went in, as you can see over here on the side, I just put in High Street. You can put in the number, but I just put in High Street. I put in the location and then I hit search. So this is what came up: 115 households here on in this area. So coming down here, you can see the house numbers. And I kind of scrolled down. I thought, this is going to work out really well for me, right? Until I got here to 241 and 243. Well, there's just one problem. There is no 242. Now, I've done some other work on it and I'm still looking for it, but to show you kind of what some census records look like, I'm going to go ahead and just show you the one from 237. So unfortunately, I didn't find the one I was looking for, but I really had a lot of fun playing around with these census records. So when I clicked on, it brought me here. Now, I will tell you, there is a small charge. I think they're, oh, I just blanked out on what it was. It's like $4, $3. Don't quote me on that. There's a small charge for that and they are doing that because of the huge expense to digitize these records. And so it is a charge in addition to a subscription, or it is a charge as opposed to a subscription here. So this is the 1921 census, and this is for Samuel Wollesen, I think is how you say that name, Wollosen. And one of the first things for you guys to note when it comes to this particular census record, see how it says read the instructions and examples shown on the back to fill out the schedule carefully and in ink? That is because the 1921 census that was given to each household, filled out by usually the head of the household. I guess it could have been somebody else in the household. And then the enumerator would return and pick it back up. So this is the original handwriting of potential ancestors here. These were filled out by the person in the head of the household, or one of the adults, I would hope, in the household. So that's a really nice thing. We actually have original handwriting here. When you're looking at this, we can see, we get the traditional surname, relationship here, but I really wanted to show you something here on relationship. So it talks about, the head of the household, the wife, mother, son, etc. But look at this, or other relative, visitor. This is important for us, particularly if you are, say, U.S. researchers who have ancestors going back to England or Wales. What that means, did they go back to visit family? So this enumeration enumerated everyone in the household. I think it was for June 19th. Everyone in the household, whether they lived there permanently, whether they were a visitor, or as you can see, boarder or servant. So that's a really unique thing. In other words, you can find family from the U.S. You can find people from the U.S. in the record, even though they didn't necessarily live in the U.K. So that has a lot of potential for our research, right? Okay, we get the usual age, and then we get the gender, marriage, or orphanhood. That's a really nice thing to see. For the first time, I believe this is the first time that in the UK they would actually use the divorce. It was an option for them. Again, where somebody was born, and if they weren't in the UK, what was their ethnicity? So as we can see here, we have Samuel and Yetta. They were born in Russia, and I guess this is a town. It's Kiev. I wonder if it was Kiev, maybe, perhaps, but they are Russian immigrants, and then their children were born there in London. We have what his occupation was. We know that he worked for himself and he worked at home. And this was an interesting thing about the different number of children of certain ages. So this was kind of another piece of the puzzle on that. Now, because these are written by the individuals themselves, we have to hope maybe the information is fairly accurate. I mean, I do realize that sometimes it might be a little off if there was somebody different in the household. Sometimes you would see different comments made on the census record. So that was kind of an interesting thing that occasionally you'll see. But each of the records has all of these filled out by the individuals of the household. So that's important to know. Now, when you purchase into one of the records here on Find My Past, you'll come down here, you'll have these really nice three little tabs here. If you click on extra materials, you have access to all of these pages once you've made purchase for that particular record. So this is the record that we're looking at here. It will show you the cover of it. So this would be the cover that it would the people would have seen. I think this is the one that they would have seen. Um, Let me pull this down just so I can see a little bit better here. Um, yeah, so this is kind of the cover from the main for this area for the main part of the enumerator had. This would be the front of the census record. So we were looking at the back or the enumeration of the individuals. This would be the front when they flip. So these are the directions. So you can actually read over the directions for each of the people. And they were quite detailed, obviously, there as well. You can again see here we have his name. We have the height. He is from in 237 High Street in the Shadwell parish. So that's kind of an interesting piece. But I always believe, read what they were asking because we want to make sure you understand what the record is going to tell you. Now, it was this record, the map, which I really like. They have two kind of the same thing. The maps. Now, guys, the maps are really amazing. So it tells us a little bit more about the registration or the sub-district there. But we're genealogists. We love a good map, right? So when you can go on here. So I know that my guy lived in High Street. Let's see if, even though I couldn't find that 242 High Street that my original guy I was looking for lived on, here's High Street. So now I know exactly where that is. We're down here, close to the Shadwell area. We're on the Thames River. I can actually then, look at that on today's map to get an even better idea of where they might be. There's the rest of the map. Okay, plans of division. This is an important piece. I wasn't really sure what this was at first. I was kind of like, do I even really need this? And then I pulled it up and I was really quite pleased with what I was seeing. Sorry, it's giving it a minute to pull up here. Okay, so this actually tells us a little bit about the area, what we would in the US think of as the enumeration district. So this is telling us about that area. So it's covered. So they're estimating there are 300 families, and it covers about 1.5 miles there. The civil parish, and this is actually pretty important to know, was Shadwell, which was part of Limehouse. This actually changed in 1921, so you can kind of see how things may have changed a little bit. But down here, it tells us the boundaries. So when you can read through this and follow it on the map and see the boundaries for that enumeration district. But here's what I really found fascinating for this one: the contents of that enumeration district. It says that, I'm going to actually blow this up just a little bit further to see if you got, oh, that might have been too much. Sorry, guys. Okay, we'll come back down. It includes the following areas. So it named the buildings like Dello Buildings. That's 50 tenements. And then there's like a Bewley Buildings. Again, 50 tenements. Here's another one with 40 tenements. This is an area that has a lot of tenement housing. So it gives us an idea of what the area looked like and what type of homes our ancestors lived in. So this is a really nice piece of social history that we can pick up from this census record. And so I found that really interesting. So while I didn't find that my husband's ancestors that I was particularly looking for yet, I will. I know the type of area that they lived in because they lived in this enumeration district. So I know the type of houses that were there, and I know kind of what I'm looking at there. So it all fit for me, and I was really excited to find this. There's just a lot of really fascinating information in this type of record. So I'm going to actually come back to you guys a bit, see if there are any comments. I'd be curious to know if you have been on the Find My Past site, if you have found any records, what you found, if you found some interesting things yet, what kinds of things you might be looking for. And again, if you don't have research needs that take you into England or Wales, and that's perfectly fine since so many of us are US based, you may or may not. Again, remember that it's always the same principles apply in understanding what the record is, what it's asking, what it's asking the citizens to do, what is recording, and what is the extra stuff that comes along with it. In other words, you know, who's doing the recording? Is it your ancestor or is it the enumerator? Is it, you know, can you pick up some of that social history that is so important into your research as well? All right, let me check over here. Thank you, Linda and Dorothy, for putting those prices in there. I do apologize for just kind of blanking out there on my I couldn't quite pull that off. So let me see, where are we at? Hey, Pam's from Canada and Tammy from California. Yep, Lydia's from Michigan. Yeah. Oh, hey, Martha, glad you could join us from the frozen Ohio. That is so funny, actually, because my son has moved up to Ohio. He's like, it's really cold up there. Yes. So Linda said it's $350 and $490. You can either purchase a transcription or you can purchase the original document. I personally go for the original document because it's easier to read. I mean, it's not easier to read. It's just I like to get all the things there. Linda said, is there a charge for every single image that I look at or the one I know is correct and want to copy? So the charge is for like each house, like the household. So like the documents that I just showed you, that was all one charge. So it was the Sam Wilson household, so his entry and that household's entry, and then all those like supplemental, the extra things that they gave with the maps and the like the back page and the front page and all that. That kind of all came together. I think it was 6 documents total there with the maps, but it is just one individual record. Red Rabbit, does any of the information say soldiers from one of its many colonies? You know, I do believe, hang on, let me just do one real quick peek here because I do think it does. Actually, let me just pop back over to my Find My Past real quick and look at that census record real quick. When it comes to searching, I think, let me double check. I saw something about that somewhere about. Okay, let me share this. I don't know if this fully answers your question, but okay, one of its many colonies. Any information soldiers from one of the many colonies. I am going to actually, it does ask about ranks, but I don't know about the actual colonies. Right. I'm going to actually make note of that. I'm going to copy that actually. And I am going to ask my contact at Find My Past about the colonies. And the other thing I will do is that next week, to let you guys know, next Thursday, that Jen Baldwin from Find My Past will join me to talk more about the census as well. So she'll be a great person to put that to as well. Hey, Danny from Ohio, snow flurries, relatives in Wales in 1921, and they'll be in the U.S. Census when it was released in 3 months. Isn't that really cool? Exciting that you can do that. The Wales. The interesting thing about the Wales census is that I think that you could actually find some of the Welsh language in there as well. So the date of the census, June 19th, the night of June 19th. So the census, if you notice, the census actually said April 24th on it. It was not taken on April 24th. They had to postpone it for a few months, but they didn't want it to go too far. And so they actually went to June 19th, but they didn't want to reprint all of it with the correct date on it because of the expense. So you will see that discrepancy there. It was not taken in April, it was taken in June. Yeah. Linda said on the day of New Year's resolution was to buy a subscription to Find My Past, but you need a budget a little bit more. It is a little bit more kind of with that, Linda, you're right. And it's not terribly expensive to purchase the extra the 1921 census things, but you don't actually have to if you can purchase them without a subscription to Find My Past, but you get a discount if you have a subscription to Find My Past, I think is how that goes. Hey, Diane from the frozen tundra of Nebraska. Okay, let's see what else. I was going to say something else about that that oh, we were talking about Danny mentioned that he was seeing he had his ancestors in Wales, and then he's going to be in the U.S. Census when it comes out in 3 months. One of the really interesting things with the release of this 1921 census is that for the UK or for England and Wales, there is no, the 1931 census did not survive, and the 1941 census wasn't taken because of the war. But consider if any of your ancestors were war brides, because they would appear likely in that 1921 census, as children. So you would, pick up some of their parents, but they would also likely appear then in the 1940 and the 1950, which will be released this spring, US Census. So you can actually kind of track them both, in both places. So that's a really kind of exciting way to research those ancestors and to check for some of the war brides that were there. The other thing that we can sometimes are seeing in these 1921 census records is a kind of an unusual thing, because the individuals were filling these out for the household. Sometimes, as people will do, they didn't always follow directions, and they would put their own commentary. So if they were not happy with the government, I've been hearing stories where they would write things on, people found notes where they've written things about their political views, about not liking something that the government did, or during if there was a woman in the home who was a suffragette. I have seen where somebody shared with me a note where you could see that the head of the household was quite upset. They actually marked her off. They wrote the name out, marked her off, and said she was a suffragette, and therefore, and since they didn't believe in that, they were not going to consider her part of the household. So you get these kind of like little funny stories in there that you can learn about. And we would never see that on the US Census because they were taken by a census taker. So it's kind of a fun little way to see a little bit more about your ancestor and that social history that is really there. So I found that really fascinating. I hope you guys are finding the 1921 release exciting and helpful to your research. It's a whole new thing to learn. It's a lot of fun to sit and peruse through there. And I'm finding already that even just doing the searches, I'm learning a lot more about the UK maps and the districts and how they're set up, because that was something I'm not as strong with, and I'm learning how to do that. All right, guys. Vicki said, oh, it's freezing in Indiana. Are any upcoming censuses for Ireland and Scotland, please? I do not have any updates on Ireland and Scotland's census records. I will tell you, back in, was it the fall, that Find My Past released, just a large volume of Scottish records. So they have if you have not checked their Scottish collection at Find My Past recently, I would encourage you to do so, because they had a huge release of a large number of records from Scotland that came up. So, and that's been fairly recent. So you might want to go back and actually peruse those documents as well. But again, I'm sorry, I don't have any updates on any of their census records that might be coming out for that at this point. So, but when I find out, I'll let you know. Okay, so next Thursday, as I said, Jen Baldwin from Find My Past. You guys have probably seen Jen chat with me before. We have such a great time. But she's going to be here to talk about the 1921 census, answer your questions. So as you take this next week, and if you're working through it, work through it. Write down your questions. I've made note of the question about the one about military serving in the colonies, and bring your questions, because Jen will be here to answer them. And I know she's been working really hard on these. She's actually was able to go over to England for the release. And so she's really thoroughly enjoying that. So make your questions. Feel free to bring them. If you can't come live, just drop them in the Facebook page or Facebook group, and I'll be happy to make sure we get those covered for you guys as well. So would be glad to do that. Other than that, I want to put in that link again to, if you guys, to keep up with the events that are coming up. Everything from Roots Tech to the 1950 census to when I'm speaking and where I'm speaking and how you can hear that, or how if you want to work with me, whatever. I'm going to put in that my email sign up in the chat, and you guys can get on my email list. And as I said, I email out once a week to kind of keep everybody up to date on everything. So there you have it. Thanks so much, guys, for coming and chatting and asking your questions. I look forward to kind of continuing the chat next week and being able to answer more questions. It's still so new. We're just really kind of getting our feet into it right now. So I'm really looking forward to, after we've had a chance to really work through, spend a week or so working with the documents some more, that we can do that. Oh, hey, Leon, how are you? That as we're spending time working through the census records over the next week, we can, really continue the topics and questions that we have for Jen next week. So I'm just so excited that she's been able to make time to join us and talk with us then. All right. In the meantime, guys, if you are watching on YouTube, before you click off, hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand corner, because that way, when I go live, when I post a new video, you will not miss it. And if you're on Facebook, if you want to just give it a thumbs up or a like or something, that way it tells the Facebook that you're interested in genealogy videos, and it'll let you know when I go live again. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Have fun researching, and I will see you next week right here at 3 o'clock. All right. Bye, guys.